Being poor is so damn expensive. You don't
Besties, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for clicking. Kindly follow this channel. So in today's video, we'll be talking about something which is very important. Okay, and I've seen this topic gone round on TikTok, and I was like, why not? So this idea that being poor is expensive, it might sound like a contradiction, but once we dive into it, you see how true it is. So we're going to unpack the hidden cost of financial struggles. So I've put the videos together so that you watch in lane, and I'll be back to share my true sense what I think about it.
Being poor is so damn expensive. You don't have insurance and you can't afford to go to the doctor, then you have to have a $4,000 procedure a couple years down the line. You have to go online and pay your bills. They're going to charge you a 1.5% fee. If you are late on a bill and they charge you a $100 fee, if I couldn't afford the bill in the first place, how am I going to afford the damn fee? If your bank goes in overdraft, they're going to charge you $35. Being poor is expensive, and I think that has been the best thing that has come out of this conversation is that people are finally acknowledging that poverty for most people is not a choice. It is the result of circumstances within this country that make it to where people are working 40, 50, 60 hours a week and still cannot afford to exist in this country. They can't afford basic needs like food, clothing, shelter, any of that. And the thing is, it wasn't just in the last 4 years that this started happening. People have been poor for quite some time. And that is absolutely ridiculous. Your car breaks down, you can't get your car fixed, so then you can't make it to work, and it's just too much. A better world is possible.
Being poor is really expensive. For example, I need a new used car, but I can only afford a car that's about the $2,000 to $3,000 range. I can't really afford anything from a dealership or to get an auto loan. After scrimping and saving and looking at cars for months and months, cars that had all sorts of crap wrong with them, I found one that seemed like okay and seemed like trustworthy people to buy from. I went over to them, checked out the car, gave them my hard-earned money, and then on the way home, I had a blowout. And then after I had a tow truck, a very expensive tow truck, because I can't afford to have AAA, tow me to a repair shop, I get told that 3 out of the 4 tires need to be replaced. And also the wheel well that's holding one of the tires on is messed up, and that needs to be fixed. So now this cheap car has cost me an extra $400. And then driving it home from the repair shop, the blinkers go out. Plus a myriad of other problems with this car that I don't know about yet. Money that I don't really have that I'd been saving for months in order to have a car that I thought would be reliable and take me around town. Because I never will be able to afford a new car. And that's just one of many examples on how poor people having to buy lower quality stuff means that they spend more money over time maintaining that shitty stuff or buying more of that shitty stuff than someone who could just buy the nicer thing.
This comment says, thanks for sharing this. There is also a poverty premium charged on goods and services when you are poor. Being poor is expensive. So absolutely, and this is a great comment on the video that I made. So typically when you're poor, not only are you marginalized and you have to live in the worst conditions, but you also get the worst end of the deal. Now, if you are on a relatively low income, chances are you have a poor credit score because you haven't either had to borrow money or you just can't afford to borrow money and don't qualify. So when you have a poor credit score, that basically means that whenever you get anything on finance, like a mortgage or a car or anything that you need to finance, you're getting the raw end of the deal. And you end up having to pay more than someone with good credit score and a good job. For example, if you're getting car finance, it could mean the difference between you paying 17% APR and you paying 8% or 9% APR. Now, depending on the value of the car, that could be the difference of a couple of £100 every single month in car finance payments. And then the most obvious one, and the one that I've encountered growing up when I was much younger, is I had friends that had electricity meters in their house, and I had friends that had electricity keys in their house, where they had to top up the key if they wanted to top up the gas or electricity. Now, they weren't on a meter because they were from a low-income household. Now, those that were using the key and not the meter ended up paying more for their gas and electricity. So it's almost a double whammy. You're poor, but then you're also paying more for the same amenities as everyone else. And then there's also the social aspect of it. Being poor is expensive in the fact that normally people that are from low income areas, they are surrounded with a lot of the ailments of society. For example, they'll be in areas where there's higher drug abuse, there's higher domestic violence, there's higher crime. So immediately you're exposed to more of the nefarious activities that happen in the world. Whereas if you are from a wealthier background, you're less likely to step out your door and see that kind of thing. So there are many instances where being poor is expensive, and it's not just financial. It can also
It's actually really expensive to be poor in America because America is designed to take advantage of lower class people. It is designed to keep lower income people as low income as possible. They don't want a ton of vertical movement up the wealth meter because they don't want people that are lower class to take over the wealthier class spots because they need the lower class to help be exploited and help fund the wealthier class. So for the wealth class to survive, they need people to stay down. So it is actually more expensive to be poor in a lot of situations. Like, for instance, boots. Perfect example. I'm sure everyone has heard the boots example. Is a good pair of working boots expensive? Very expensive. It could be like $200-$300 for a really good, well-made pair of boots. But a cheap pair of work boots from Walmart is like $50 to $60. If you are paycheck to paycheck, what do you think you're going to do? You're going to pay for the cheaper boots that are going to last you maybe 6 months. And then you're going to be back and you're going to have to buy a new pair of boots. And then you're going to maybe have those last another 6 months, but you're not going to be able to pay $200-$300 every 6 months. So each time the new boots come up, you're never going to be able to afford expensive new boots. You're only ever going to be able to afford the cheap ass boots that are going to keep breaking. But if you just bought the $200 boots at the first time, those could last a decade and you would have never had to replace them. And it would have been a lot cheaper than paying for $50 boots every year or every other year for 10 years. Same with like interest rates. People that can afford to just buy a car don't have to worry about what interest rates are, and they don't have to worry about how expensive it would be to borrow the money. And people that can just afford to go and buy a house, they don't have to worry about how much a mortgage would cost or what the rates of a mortgage are because they could afford to just buy things flat out. They don't have to pay the fee to borrow the money. Another prime example is how some social benefits are set up to run. And for instance, a lot of people that are receiving benefits and that are lower income, they know that they can't go out and get another job. They can't get better work. They can't get a higher paying job unless it's significantly higher paying. Because if it's just a little bit higher paying, it's going to be enough to take away all their benefits, but not enough to pay for the benefits. So they'd actually have less money in the long run. So stuff like that keeps people from being motivated for actually finding a better job and having any class mobility because they can't afford to lose their benefits short term. Things like this keep people poor long term, and this is very much by design. People cannot afford to be poor. That's the problem.
So that's a video, besties. So I'm just here to share what I think, the idea that being poor is expensive. Okay, so I've put the videos together so that you watch and learn. And I'm just here also, let me share my true sense. So the reality of financial constraints, let's start with the basics. Okay, so when you don't have a lot of money, you often can't afford to buy in bulk. For example, buying a single item might seem cheaper upfront, but over time it costs more because you're not taking advantage of the discounts for buying larger quantities. And this applies to so many things: groceries, toiletries, even cleaning supplies. The cost of convenience, then there is the cost of convenience. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you may not have the time or energy to prepare meals at home every day. So you end up relying on fast food or prepackaged meals, which are often more expensive and less nutritious. Over time, this can affect your health, leading to even more expenses. Okay, debt and interest. Another thing that makes poverty so expensive is debt. If you're poor, you are more likely to rely on credit cards or payday loans just to make ends meet, and the interest rate on these can be very expensive. You end up paying so much more than original cost of what you needed just because you didn't have the money upfront. So there's also housing struggle. Let's talk about housing. When you don't have a lot of money, you might end up living in areas where rents seem cheaper, but these places may not be well um looking. Okay, think about the cost of constant repairs, high quality utility bills because the building is not energy efficient, or even medical expenses from living in an healthy environment is all adds up. There's healthcare inequality. Healthcare is another big one. If you're poor, you might skip regular checkups or preventive care because you can't afford it. But that means small issues can grow into bigger, more expensive problems. And when you financially don't care, it's often through emergency services, which is the most expensive way to get treated. So there's also transportation costs. Now let's consider transportation. A reliable car is expensive, so if you're poor, you might end up with an older car that breaks down more often. Each repair adds up, or maybe you rely on public transportation, which can be unreliable, time consuming, and also costing you opportunities and sometimes even your job. The mental and emotional toll. There is also an emotional cost to being poor that we don't talk about enough. The constant stress of trying to make ends meet. Okay, there's this like you're always stressed, and expensive. It all takes a toll on your mental health. And therapy or counseling, that's another expense. Many people just can't afford it. So breaking the cycle. So why is this important to talk about? Because understanding the truth, cost of poverty is the first step forward. Addressing it, it's not just about budgeting better or pulling yourself up by your bootstrap. It's about recognizing that systematic issue make it hard for people to get ahead. So encouragement and action steps for anyone watching this who's struggling financially, know that you're not alone. Okay, a lot of people are going through the same. There are resources out there, community programs, financial literacy courses, and even online communities where you can share advice and support. Okay, so small steps can lead to bigger changes. So being poor is not just about not having enough money, it's about paying more for most everything because of lack of resources. So I hope this video shed more light and encourages us to think more critically about how we can support each other. If you found this video insightful, share it with someone who might need hear this message. Okay, so until next time, guys, take care of yourself and stay kind to one another. All right, so that's a video for today, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. I Please take care of yourself and see you next time. Bye.